Hello and welcome to this April newsletter for 2017. My apologies for missing the newsletter in March, but we were away travelling for about 7 weeks, and by the time we got home and did all of the chores that you need to do when you've been away a number of weeks, then March was almost gone. So we've looked forward and created our video for April. Well, the big news over the past few weeks has been the launch of PicturesToExe 9, something we've been waiting quite a time for, but I think it was well worth the wait. I did manage to create a number of tutorial sets in the run-up to the launch. I do have one which is entitled What's New in PicturesToExe 9, which covers all of the new features and how they work, animation and slide styles, and that's basic animation, then advanced animation and custom transitions, and also a creative visual techniques set of videos. Now, being thousands of kilometers away from home when the software was launched, there was one or two small changes made which I didn't include in my videos. They are small but worth taking a look. Let's go to any one of these images, doesn't matter which one, and just open up the objects and animation screen. When we're creating animation, we know we can click and drag to create movement. We can click and drag on any of the letter values here and reset them by double clicking, of course. But there is another way too. If you hold the Alt key, you can use the up, down and left and right cursor control keys on your keyboard. So for example, if I press and hold the down arrow, you can see how the image walks down. But of course the idea of this is if we want to move an image small amounts, then if I just touch it, if you look at the value up on the top right, you can see as I nudge the up arrow how it's changing in small segments, and that could be and probably will be quite valuable to the PicturesToExe user. Now, there's often times when we're working with any type of software where we're trying things out, trying to get our head around how the software works. And there are times when we may create some animation. Let me just put a keyframe in at the end there. If I wanted to create some animation from that point to there, and maybe to move the image over to the left, well, if we look at this, we can see the animation that I've created, and it could be a lot more complex than that. There are times when rather than going up here and having to click all of these to reset everything, if we go to the tools now, we do have an option to undo all changes. Very convenient and quick. When you downloaded PicturesToExe 9 and installed it, you may have noticed that there was a demonstration project in the slide list at the bottom of the screen. Once you escape from that demonstration project, then it won't return, but you can bring it back should you need to by going to the Help menu at the top and choosing Open Sample Project. Now, this project was created by yours truly here, but it's great for learning the software too. For example, let's just pick one of these little bits of animation. Let's select this one here and go to the Objects and Animation screen. Let me press play just to refresh our memory on what's going on here. A little bit of text appears on screen. As it disappears, the image will spin round to reveal another one. Well, we can use this demonstration project to sort of dissect how that bit of animation was created. We can select each part of the animation in turn over on the right hand side. Let's start at the bottom, because as it says here, this is just the background. We can see it shown up with the highlight, and we can see the background is quite soft, and over here you can see the blur value has been set at 16. Nothing else needs to be done. That's just our background to help us to present the image in front. Jumping to the top of the stack, we have the text, and when I select that, we can see the 4 keyframes that control the text. So there's the first keyframe. The text is actually in place, but we can't see it because over here the opacity has been reduced to 0. But between 2.5 seconds and 3.5 seconds, that opacity is brought back to its maximum. Between 3.5 and 6.5, nothing happens because that's the time we need to read the text, but then in the last second, it fades back off the screen. So I can move these anywhere I wish, but you can see how it was created. When we select the parent here, these two keyframes, as we can see, affect the rotation of the image. Now I've set 5 seconds between these two, but of course that's variable depending on what we're doing. And when it gets round to the other side, we see the other image, because the other image is a child of the parent. So the demonstration project does give us something to view and see how the software works and the sort of things we can do with it, but we can also use it as a learning tool as well. Now I received the following question in my emails this morning. How do I get borders on my photos like you showed me in PicturesToExe 8? I can't find how to do this in PicturesToExe 9. I can add them one at a time, which is a little bit of a pain. Many thanks for all your help. Well, there's a number of ways we can put that fine, thin line around the outer edge of our images, and I do cover this technique in detail in our Creative Visual Techniques set of videos, including making a full-blown frame as well. But let's just take a look at one way of doing it here. I think that probably the quickest and easiest way to do this is to use a slide style. Now it either means you've got to download one of mine or create one yourself, but it's so easy to create and so quick, whether you're an Elements user or a Photoshop user. So let me launch Photoshop and I'll open up a blank canvas 1920 pixels by 1080. I've created a new blank canvas in Photoshop at 1920 pixels by 1080. I've created it black so you're able to see the thin line that I'm about to put around the edge, but in actual fact we don't need the black. So I'm going to go to my layers. I'm just going to create a new blank layer over the top. This is the one we're going to end up saving. We can drop this in a bin in a moment, but that black will allow us to see the line we're about to create. You can either go to select at the top of the screen all, or hit Ctrl-A, the shortcut key. There you can see the marching ants around the outer edge. Go to Edit, Stroke. We're going to put just 1 pixel. Try to avoid white, even at 1 pixel. Sometimes white can be a little bit overpowering. So if you click this and drop down to a middish grey, it looks as though it's not going to do much at all in your slideshow, but it will be more than enough to do what you require. Click OK, click OK. If I hit Ctrl D, you can see the black background does allow you to see that. When I drag that in the bin, it's a little bit more difficult to see, but of course by now we know it's present. So now I need to save this, but I need to save it and retain the transparent nature of the image, because all I really have is that 1 pixel line. So let's go to File, Save As. The option we need from the Save As Type drop-down menu is the PNG file. I'm going to put it in my little USB stick with everything else, and I generally standardize and call this a frame, but it's up to the individual, of course. That's all we need to do in Photoshop. Let's go back into PicturesToExe. With PicturesToExe open, I'm going to select any one of these images. It doesn't matter which, but this one at the start will do. I'm going to open up the Objects and Animations screen. I need to lose the bounding box here because I'm going to add the frame, and if I add the frame with that bounding box in place, the frame will be added to the image as a child of the parent. I don't want that, because if in some stage I want to animate this flower image, I want the frame to remain stationary. So just click into the grey area, go to Add an Image, and you can add the frame. Now when I click into the grey area, it is still difficult to see the frame in place, but then again we're looking at the image here at only 50% of its size. Now I can cheat just a little bit here to show you in fact it is there. I'm just going to select both of these and just select both of the keyframes and bring the zoom down, because now we're looking at this isolated against black and we can see that we do in fact have a beautifully delicate line around the edge of the image. Now resetting both of those keyframes back to 100%, there's the frame, there's the image. What we've got to do here is to make the image the main image in our slide style, but not the frame, because the frame needs to be applied to any image we select. The way we do that is by going to the properties. The image itself, you can see the little box is ticked main object, that's okay. When I select the frame, this box needs to be unticked, so if it does have a tick in place, remove it. Once we've done that, I'll close down the objects and animation screen and I'll go to my slide styles, because I'm going to create a style of what I've just created here. I'm going to go to Tools, Create a Style. I'm going to put them in my user styles at the moment. I'm going to make the name, or I'm going to call this one pixel frame. I can put in here who the author is if I want to. And the great thing about slide styles now, trying to type and talk at the same time is not a good idea, is we can add comments. Well, we don't need to do too much of that here perhaps, but with some of the animation, instruction or two in that box could be quite useful. But all I'll do is create it. Now the one thing we have to remember with slide styles is that slide styles not only apply the animation, but they also apply the slide duration, in our case 7 seconds, which the author has determined for the animation. Now I have not changed anything here, so it's going to stay with the default setting. So if we're going to use a slide style to put a thin line around the outer edge of the images in our slideshow, we really need to think about doing that before we start programming the slides. I'll give you an example of this. Let's just assume that we actually had a slide duration here of 14, 10 with this one. Let's say we've spent quite a bit of time putting all of these slides to music. Of course we wouldn't see the music in the timeline. In this slide list we'll see the music in the timeline. But to apply that outer thin line, all I need to do is to select all of the images. Now that's the great thing again about slide styles. We can add them to one image or 150 images. So I'm going to select the first one, scroll to the end, shift click and select them all. Go back to my slide style. I need to scroll down to my user styles. There they are. There's the one I've just created. I can apply that with just one click. But you'll notice that these images where I changed the slide duration has now been changed back to 7 seconds. So it would be a mistake to use this method after you've started to synchronize your slideshow. Do this before you start and you're home and dry. Let's just take a quick look at one or two of the others. Let's go to this one, Objects and Animation Screen. There we can see the frame has been applied, but if we really want to see it, I could do what I did before and just temporarily zoom it down and click. There's the fine line. The quickest and easiest way, but we have to think about it before we start doing synchronization to music or sound. Another new option within PicturesToExe 9 that I found useful is we can adjust the width of the keyframe icon. If I select any one of these images and go to the Objects and Animation screen, we know we can create as many keyframes as our animation demands. Sometimes when we click on them we miss a little bit maybe, and we go to drag and we miss the icon itself. So one option we do have, if we go to the tools down here, you'll see a keyframe width. Now you can see we can select from a number of them. I doubt we're going to want to go to 300%, but who knows. But I found it's quite useful to set these at about 150%. It does depend on the type of work you're doing. If you're doing really close fine work, you may need more of a gap between keyframes than we can physically see. But for most of the work that I do, I've increased the size of my keyframes, and I'm finding that quite useful. To locate all of the videos that I've created so far for PicturesToExe 9, come to www.beckhamdigital.com.au, and on the main screen you'll see a PicturesToExe menu. If you go down to the tutorials, there you'll see a category for PicturesToExe 9. Click the category, and there are the sets that I've created so far. What's new in PicturesToExe 9, a quick start guide for the newer user of PicturesToExe, basic animation and slide styles, advanced animation and custom transitions, adding and editing video, and creative visual techniques. If you want to know what they contain, for example, what's new in 9, click. It'll take you to the page. There's a YouTube video. You can play it within this screen, or you can go to YouTube and play it full screen. As I've said in the information above, download time for the complete set, I tested this at around 14 minutes on a moderate broadband. Just click the video for full details and the scope of the video set.